Hey everybody, I hope everybody is well. I hope everybody's having a meaningful day and had a meaningful morning and is having an easy fast. We know that when we think about destruction, we think about the obligation we have this day to be mindful of the Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni, and of all of the other calamities, the atrocities, the difficulties, the destruction, the Churban that took place. As the Gemara Maseches Tainis famously tells us in the Mishnah, in the explanation in the Gemara, of all of the calamities and of all the difficulties that took place and the destruction and in the aftermath of that terrible despair for which we mourn. It's appropriate for us to continue this day, a day of introspection, a day of contemplation, a day of national mourning, hoping for and being desirous of not just the building of an edifice, of a building, but also to appreciate what the building represented Hashras Hashchina, divine presence, the ability for us to connect, to be able to be complete, to be whole and wholesome, to be mindful, and to live with mindfulness in every aspect of our lives, and to have a kedusha, a ruchnius, a holiness that would permeate our being, our essence, in a very valuable and a very meaningful and a life-fulfilling way. And that's what we continue to do throughout the duration of Tisha B'Av. We're inspired. And there's so many shiurim and opportunities for us to think about life's meaning and life's purpose and the goals and the attributes for which we are desirous to mostly cling to and to better ourselves in any and every way possible. And so through this study this afternoon, as part of the program that we're working together this Tisha B'Av in conjunction and in partnership with Yeshiva University, and the unbelievable, fabulous shiurim that are by extension, part of this program, and there's so many others that exist in the Torah world. We're honored to participate in this program and by sharing a perspective of what took place, what was lost, and also to understand it as part of the monumental springboard for our gain, for our betterment, and for our hopefulness, and for the promise and the destiny, and our role in the narrative of the Jewish people. So let's begin. Let's understand, while there are so many more, I just want to focus our attention, if we can, this afternoon on four main parts of what it was that the Beis HaMikdash had, what it was that it represented, what it is that we mourn in its loss, and ultimately to be able to be misaken with a number of different instances and areas which are part of the lexicon, the language of Tisha B'Av, not only on this day, but throughout the course of the year, that we have to better ourselves and know how to improve. So first, let's begin by understanding what the divine presence, what it meant for there to be Hashras Hashchina. The Yalkut Shimoni and Eicha tells us that the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, it means and it meant that there was literally no longer a place for the Ribono Shel Olam, the Almighty, to dwell. That there was a palpable presence of Hashem when there was a Beis HaMikdash. And despite the fact, and suffice it to say, that we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can dwell and does dwell wherever he wants and chooses at any point in any time. We know that when it was, as says the Yalkut, that there was a Chorban Beis HaMikdash, Kevan Sh'sarfuhu, when there was destruction, says the Yalkut, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shuv ein li Moshe ba'aretz, kol ha'aretz lo shalihu, that there is no longer a resting place for me to dwell, for me to stand. There is no longer a description of this land as mine. And this is a very powerful demonstration of what it means that the Hashras Hashchina, that the divine presence is no longer in our midst, it's not with us. After the sins that are mentioned and articulated time and again in the Midbar, in the desert, how many times did the Jewish people, after the Chet HaMaraglim, the Chet HaEgel, after they defiantly said that it's true that they were sinners, that they were rebellious, that now they will follow the Ratzon Hashem, that they then failed nonetheless to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was no longer in their midst. Ella, says the Yalkut, Asolek Shchinosi Mimeni. No longer is this my place. I will remove my presence from it. It is an active removal. It is not just that we, the Jewish people, the Klal Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael in exile, but also by our rebelliousness and our unwillingness to follow the Ratzon Hashem, the divine precepts, the way we should, we thrust the Almighty into exile as well. So the divine presence is area number one. We also understand that what the Beis HaMikdash represented was a simcha, a joy, an unbridled celebration that was felt during that time, that something could not be literally ever replicated until the Beis HaMikdash would be rebuilt. As the Mishnah tells us in Maseches Sukkah, Mishnah Aleph and Perek Aleph, that the ultimate experience of human joy, you know that there are scores of people that are trying, whether it's taking Tal Ben Shachar's most popular class at Harvard University, the most populated class in university history, searching for happiness. What is the meaning of happiness? What is it that I have to do to achieve and to live with happiness? People are on a whole host of medications to try to make sure that they're able to feel happier. Happiness is something that we are in hot and heavy pursuit of trying to achieve and to acclaim. And so says the Mishnah that the ultimate human joy experience was to be found in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple, when during Sukkot, when the Chachamim would sing, when they would dance, when they lit torches to the accompaniment of music that was played by the Levim, Kol Misha lo ra'a simchas Beis HaShoeva, lo ra'a simcha miyamav. Says the Mishnah that somebody who did not win this Simchas Beis HaShoeva did not see Simcha in their days. That means we could have participated and have participated in Simcha. But that's why the Gemara famously tells us, as I've mentioned a number of times, even through a number of shiurim on the Tisha B'Av this morning and last night, that one who mourns properly the Beis Hamikdash will merit to be able to see it being rebuilt with rejoicing and with its celebration, because when a person truly feels that Simcha, it only happens when a person feels that Simcha in conjunction with the Beis Hamikdash. That's number two. Number three, we have to understand that when the Beis Hamikdash stood and without it, what happens as a result is that the open channel for tefillah, for prayer, is no longer there. We do not have any longer the ability to pray the way we think, or maybe perhaps we're under the false illusion that we do daven the way we could pray in the ultimate maximum form and fashion. We think, we take it for granted. We come to Shachris, we come to Mincha, we come to Ma'ariv, we go to a Ne'ilah, we go to a Kol Nidre. That's davening, it's riveting, it's inspiring, it's true, it is. But the open channel for tefillah, that which is the ultimate opportunity for us to be successful in tefillah, is not something that anybody could ever possibly feel without the Beis Hamikdash. It's as we learn in Parshas Vayetze in Perek Chof Ches Pasuk Yud Zayin. In Rashi's commentary, the pasuk says, "Vayomer manoira makom hazeh," that Yaakov Avinu, he was frightened as he woke from his sleep. And Vayomer manoira makom hazeh, he says, "Wow, how awesome and how inspiring is this makom, is this place?" Ein zeh ki'im beis Elokim v'zeh shara shamayim. He said profoundly and prophetically, this must be God's house. It is the gate to heaven. And Rashi says, "V'zeh shara shamayim makom tefillah." This is the place of tefillah. La alois tefilosam hashamayim, where tefillos, where prayers rise to the heavens. That was Makom Hamikdash. That is the place, Har HaMoriah, where the Beis Hamikdash stood. Where the Beis Hamikdash, please God, will stand once again. It is Makom of Akedah. It is the Makom of the Ribono Shalom's dwelling place. It is the place of the Sulam, the dreams that were perceived. Parshas Vayetze by Yaakov Avinu, when he sees the Malachim, their Olim v'Yordim Bo. And the Gemara famously in Maseches Brachos tells us on Daf Lamed Beis, that after Chorban Beis Hamikdash, the gates of Tefillah have been sealed. We cannot make a mistake, fail to realize that what we're lacking, what we're yearning for, what we're mourning because of the fact that there's Chorban Beis Hamikdash, we do not even have the ability to daven, to pray successfully the way we ought to, the way we wish to, the way we hope to. Maybe the potency, the power, the fluency, the success of our tefillos is compromised, as it's so compromised. Why? Because we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. Imagine the success rate of our tefillos, how much greater, how much more impactful, how much more meaningful, how much more successful they would be if we have a Beis Hamikdash. So says the Gemara, Miyom Shecharav Beis Hamikdash, Ninalu Sharei Tefillah. It's a very strong language in the Gemara. From the time that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, Ninalu means that the gates of Tefillah are locked. They are sealed. As the pasuk that we recited in Eicha last night, Perek Gimel pasuk Ches, Shenemar Gam Ki Ezak Vashos Shasam Tefilasi, that my tefillah, it is shut out. So laments Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, the prophet, that I daven, I pray, and yet it is sasum, it is closed, it is concealed, it is sealed, it is unable for us to penetrate the kisei, to the kisei hakavod, to Shar Shamayim. We have to realize that we are not only without divine presence, we are not only without simcha, but we are without the open channel for tefillah, the open channel for davening. And fourth, the miracles, the nisim, v'niflos at the Beis Hamikdash, and the divine protection, the shmira. You know, when you put a mezuzah on your door, the three letters that are seen, that are on the outside of the cloth on the mezuzah, Shin, Dalad, Yud, Shokai, spelling Hashem's name. The Rashi Tevis, the acronym, of course, is Shomer Dalsos Yisrael, to safeguard the doorposts of the Israelites. That's Shemira, that safeguard, that divine protection that we're lacking without Beis Hamikdash. It was like, you know, we celebrate The Iron Dome, which protects us from the incoming rockets of our enemies, our antagonizers, and we should and continue to pray for that to be something that we still have and more so, but nonetheless, there's something even greater than the Iron Dome, and that's called the Iron Dome, the Beis HaMikdash, that shields, that protects with divine hashros, hashchin, with divine shmir, with divine protection, the nisim and the flows of the Mikdash, of the Beis HaMikdash, as we learn in the Mishnah in Perkei Avos and Perek Hey Mishnah Hey, where the Mishnah tells us of the miracles, the nisim, the laws of nature, were literally suspended, transcended, and open nisim, open miracles can be witnessed by anybody present. Today everything's concealed, everything isn't revealed. Imagine the opportunity that we would have to see open miracles and what that would do for our lives. We know, as we are taught, that when a person is able to perceive open miracles, what that means is that obviously then you'll be able to know that there are concealed miracles as well. Mara Shivcha Layam, that Yechezkel ben Buzi wasn't even able to see with Kriyas Yamsuf, or the splitting of the sea. So we are taught by our rabbis that even a person who doesn't perceive that which is concealed, if you're able to see open miracles, you'll then be able to know that blinking, digestion, secretions, sensations, everything is a miracle. Just the mere existence, the fact that we are able to get up in the morning, to have our ability to contemplate, to have relationships, to be able to have anything that has anything to do with the Ribbonu Shalom, it's a miracle. Sunrise, sunset, open miracles. Says the Mishnah in Perkei Avos, Asar Nisim Nosel Avosenu Bebeis HaMikdash. There were 10 open miracles that took place for our ancestors during the time of the Beis HaMikdash. What were these 10 miracles? No woman miscarried from the reach of the sacrificial meat. The sacrificial meat, it never became putrefied. No fly was seen in the place where the meat was cut up. Never did a seminal emission occur to the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, on Yom Kippur. Rains did not extinguish the fire on the Mizbeach, on the altar. The wind did not disperse the vertical column of smoke from the Mizbeach. No disqualification was found on the Karban Omer, on the Lechem Aponim. The people stood crowded together, yet they were able to prostrate themselves within wide spaces between them. Never did a snake nor a scorpion injure somebody in Yerushalayim, and nobody said to his chaver, there is no room for me to sleep overnight in Yerushalayim. Asara Nisim Nasu Lavosenu Bebeis HaMikdash, open nisim. We have to understand divine presence, simcha, tefillah, nisim, miracles, and divine protection. That's what we've lost. That's what we are missing. Prophecy, nevuah, the ability for us to have clarity. What we've lost, it's so monumental. It is so cataclysmic and so colossal. It is so huge. It is so instrumental and so necessary, fundamental, foundational for us to understand truly what it is that we are mourning, what we've lost, and imagine what it is that would be our lives different if only we could rebuild it, if only we could have it. Dear friends, just as the temple, the Beis HaMikdash, was destroyed through our ancestors' misdeeds, falling prey to the temptation of Yetzer Hara, falling prey to the temptation of the Sitra Acher, that which is the demonic forces that encourage us and cajoles us to do Averos and to be Rachok from the Ribbonu Shalom. So each generation, every single door has the capacity to take the concrete, tangible, real-life steps to rectify the Averos, the transgressions, and thereby enable the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, biyadenu, in our hands and our time. And as such, every generation in which the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt is viewed as if itself, our generation, caused the very destruction, as the Gemara Yerushalmi Maseches Yuma Aleph tells us. Kol dor v'dor shlo nivne Beis HaMikdash b'yamav ma'ala olav akosu ki'ilu hu ma'echrivu. That every generation in which the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt is regarded as them being responsible for its destruction. It's a very, very powerful Maimer Chazal. That means we're not just simply pontificating, remembering, reminiscing of an event that took place in antiquity from yesteryear, but we're rather recognizing this as something that's in our hands, to which we are obligated to take responsibility for. In order for us to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, we have to correct the flaws, the shortcomings that led to its desecration, to its degradation. We have to think about our ancestors. We have to think about ourselves. What is it that we ourselves have not done? Where have we fallen short? What is it that we are lacking? Or better said, what is it that we can do once and for all to better ourselves? Not only is today Tisha B'Av a national day of mourning, but Tisha B'Av has become also a national day of inspiration. So many opportunities for us to better ourselves, to take lessons with us, to be inspired. So what are the things that we must do to hold ourselves responsible, to make ourselves better, for us to now appreciate what it is that we are able to do to rebuild our Beis HaMikdash now and always. So I want to focus for the time we have remaining together on the four things that are so necessary for us, that we can appreciate and come to understand, and perhaps spend some time focusing on four areas, some of which, of course, we focused on in the past, so much of which has been the theme of Tisha B'Av, not only in years before, but also this Tisha B'Av, but no less is less significant today and now. The first is that it cannot be said strong enough and over and again until it's true that we will understand what this means. That we understand that the necessary first and foremost prerequisite ingredient that will make the ultimate Yeshua salvation, Geula, redemption that is going to be in our midst, that we're going to experience, is when we focus on respecting and loving other fellow Jews. We have to understand what that really means. It doesn't mean that we're all going to agree theologically, politically, socially, economically. It doesn't mean that we're going to have the same taste buds for the same types of foods. What it means, when we have kavod, when we have respect for another person, we love, baseless love, causeless love that allows us to feel for other Jews a genuine sense of brotherhood, of sisterhood, despite our differences. Sure, it's very convenient when we're able to get along with each other and everything sounds nice and easy, when everything is on the same page. Sure, you agree with me and I agree with you, so of course we can get along. What happens when we can't get along? So that's what the Sfas Emes explains in his commentary on Rosh Hashanah, that loving one's fellow Jew will facilitate, will help rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. Of course, we know that the Gemara tells us that because Bais Sheni was destroyed, was lost to us because of baseless hatred, it will be Shalidei Avos Yisrael. Nivne Bezos Hashem Yisbarach. It's Avos Yisrael. It's a baseless, causeless love. And he explains based on his Haggadah, his commentary on Haggadah Shal Pesach, and his commentary Halach Ma'ani, the Chasam Sofer says famously, Shema Tomer, so it will be that you're going to ask, Ma Rechenu b'Yetzias Mitzrayim v'anachnu b'Goyla. What is it that we've gained in being freed from Mitzrayim, since anyway we're back in exile? How can you celebrate your Geula from Mitzrayim when after all, thousands of years, we're still desperate for the redemptive state? We're still in exile. We're still in Golus. So what's the chilek? Elo says this the Chasam Sofer. Elo shebe Golus Mitzrayim. When it came to Golus Mitzrayim, leicholnu ledoleg al hakeitz. You know what the difference is? When we were enslaved in Egypt, we had not the ability to expedite our redemption. We couldn't hasten our Geula. It's true, we went out b'chipazah, but that's what Kadosh Baruch Hu's doing. But we couldn't expedite our redemption. And everybody wants to expedite the process. You're standing in the back of the line, you need TSA, you need global entry. You want to make sure that you have the expedited global entry from your passport. You want to be able to get from one point to another rather quickly. We weren't able to expedite our redemption. However, says the Chasam Sofer, Golus Zeh b'yadeinu. However, this Golus, we are capable of ending it b'yadeinu l'karei v'esaketz, to bring the Yeshua, the salvation. We're able to bring the redemption sooner al yidei tzedakah ma'asim tovim, by doing good deeds, charitable acts, kindness, chesed. The Fichach called Dichvin Yeseh v'yochel, he writes, this is why we say Alach Ma'anya at the beginning of the Pesach Seder. Make no mistake, it's not that I've lost track of time. That we know that the first night of Pesach Seder also corresponds to when Tisha B'Av, on the day of the calendar week when it falls out. A Wednesday night, a Thursday was the first night of Pesach Seder, so too is the morning of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Tisha B'Av, first night of Pesach. Why? Because they're intrinsically linked. If there isn't Geula and Geula's Mitzrayim, there is not going to be Geula of Chorban Beis HaMikdash. And so therefore, Kol Dichvin Yeseh v'Yechol, which means at the beginning of the Pesach Seder, we invite guests into our home saying, whoever is hungry, Whoever is needy, come to join in the Seder in the merit of this. It means that Geula from Mitzrayim was not biyadenu. It happened when it happened. But Geula from Chorban Beis Hamikdash, it is biyadenu, and it happens with staka and ma'asim tovim, with good deeds and charitable acts, kindness, loving kindness, causeless, baseless, avas Yisrael. That's number one. The second is that we've spoken about it time and again. And the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation, Soll Sein Gesund and Stark Sein, has made an unbelievable effort to make sure that Shmiras HaLashon, being careful to improve our speech, is paramount. It's part of the language, the lexicon, the limud, the seder of study in the Jewish world today like never before. If you don't have a lesson a day of the Chafetz Chaim, Shmiras HaLashon, you can easily get it on Amazon, Eichler's, anywhere that you can go to your online bookstore and get it. You can study every single day. What an unbelievable opportunity to improve our speech. That's number two. Central to harmonious coexistence is the way we speak to each other. It's the way we speak about each other. I have a general rule. If somebody speaks to me about somebody else, I almost always know that that person speaks to somebody else about me. It usually tells me a window into the world of what it is that these people are doing. I know by the way they speak to me about other people. It's not just how we speak to people, but how about how we speak about other people and those other people aren't there. We have to be so careful. We've heard these lessons time and time again, but now we have to. That's what the Chafetz Chaim writes in Shmiras HaLashon Chelik Sheni. Whoever speaks positively of others and pursues peace is an Ohev Shalom, is an Ohev Habrios. He's a Mekarv L'Toya, pursues peace. He's like an Aaron HaKohen who pursuant of peace. That person has a share in the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. And he quotes the Zohar HaKadosh that even one congregation, even if it is Bekenishta Chadim, Ahayu Shaimrim Midas HaLashon Hara, if there is even one Kehila HaKadosha that maintains peace, that is able to have Midas HaShalom, Kirai, that has peace properly, can merit to bring the Zakos, the Bias HaMashiach, can bring Mashiach. And therefore, what that means is the Chafetz Chaim, in Kain Bias HaMashiach Tuluya Biyadenu, that means again, the coming of Mashiach is dependent on us. It is known that one of the ways of preserving peace, it can only be accomplished if we're careful in avoiding both baseless hatred and speaking derogatorily about other people, speaking Lashon Hara. Each individual who endeavors to rectify these shortcomings will have a chelik, he says, N'sakin achet hazeh, yiyeh lo chelik v'beis habnuya la'osid. That means, that says the Chafetz Chaim, that a person will have a chelik in the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. Without this, chas v'shalom, the biltam haya bayis chorav li'olam chas v'shalom. Without this, the Beis HaMikdash could potentially chalila rachmana litzlan and remain destroyed forever. It is biyadenu. It is in our hands. That's number two. Number three, we talk about the opportunities that we have to study Torah. We talk about the respect that the Torah and Torah scholars need, demand, have, should have. But we fail sometimes to appreciate what that means. I know people who started this new machzor of the Daf Yomi, and they will tell you, and they have told me, that the daily study of Talmud has literally changed their lives. Your lives are now fully and totally, utterly enriched like never before. We have to learn to respect Torah. Respect Torah doesn't mean to just merely respect it from afar, but to respect Torah means to study it, to love it, to live it, to have it part of your day. You wake up, mo dani lefanecha, aplat gemara. Matoivo alecha Yaakov into the base Knesset, the Beit Kanishta, Ashtagin in learning. I'm able to be marvel the Sedra, Perish Rashi, the Ramban, the Sephorna, the Balaturim, the Ketsois, the Rechaim HaKadosh, a love for Torah Shebechsav, a love for Torah Sheba'al Peh, respecting Torah. Says the Medrash in Eicha Rabbah, in the Psichta, he says, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yirmiyah, B'Shem Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yitzchak Omar. Shematzino shevita kodesh baruch le'avodas kochavim val gilarayis val shvichos damim. So says the Medrash Rav Huna, these great Rabbanim, Rabbi Yirmiyahu, Rabbi Shmuel, said in the name of Yitzchak, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was willing to ignore the three cardinal sins, the sin of avodah zarah, idol worship, incest, murder. But there was one sin that he was unwilling, lo viter al ma'asa shel Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was unwilling to ignore the despising. He was mused to Klal Yisrael's a despising thing to the people, the despising of Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu just simply could not bear. That is what, says the Medrash, thrust us and the Gemara likewise into exile, into Golus, to hate Torah, chas v'shalom. Eis Chaim hi lemachazikim ba. It is the elixir. It is Chaim. It is the antidote to Mavis. It is what gives us life. Ki heim chayenu v'oirech yameinu. It is Torah HaKadosha. V'loviter al-masa shel Torah. And the Rebbeinu Shalom was unable to ignore the despising of Torah. As the Pasuk says, V'oisi ozvu v'estirasi lo shamaru. That the Pasuk tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you abandoned me and you did not observe my Torah. If only you just, please, if only you would have just abandoned me, but observed my Torah, through your engagement in Torah, its light would have brought you back. Mitoich shayu ma'askin ba ha'ma'or sheba ha'ya machazira lemutav. You know what has the koyach to bring a person back? The potent and the powerful nature of Torah. And when you have the koyach HaTorah, it brings a person back. It brings a person on the straight path. It is the realization it's not just to respect the Torah from afar, but to respect something is to love it, to live it, to crack open the binding, to crack your teeth, and to really connect to it. And as I said before, the amount of people that I know who started the Daf Yomi, who started a Chavrusa, their lives are literally transformed, they're changed. Everything you see is now through the eyes, the lens of Torah. It's unbelievable how a person's life can literally change. Kiheim chayenu, v'oirech yomenu. It is the elixir of life. It is Chaim. It is what gives us purpose. It's what gives us meaning. That's number 3. And number 4. Number 4 is super significant as it relates to what happens today and ultimately what happens, how we think throughout the rest of the year. And that is the yearning that a person is supposed to have for better days. The yearning for the Messianic era, the yearning for Mashiach Tzidkenu, the realization that it's not just mere lip service, but something that we need, that we must have, that we are praying for, that we are tovim, that we are literally petitioning to the Ribono Shel Olam, Genug Shine, it's enough already. We want Mashiach Tzidkenu, not just because there's a pandemic, but because of the fact that there's thousands of years of exile, of Golus, of exile, of richuk, thousands of years to yearn for Mashiach. Is it not enough? Ad Mosai Timloich B'Tzion. We yearn for Mashiach. That's the 4th and perhaps final lesson, at least of today, that we have to focus our attention. And with this, we embellish this point greatly. It is said about Rav Moshe Teitelbaum, the Yismach Moshe, that his longing for Mashiach to come was incredibly intense. I want to draw from this. I want to draw from his intensity. He's quoted as saying, if I had known in my youth that in my old age Mashiach still had not come, I would not have physically survived due to the pain, the anguish in his delay. That his delay, what it would have caused me, the pain, I would not have survived. My soul would have left me. However, it is only because of my trust, my bitochon, my tikva, my hope in the Ribono Shel Olam, that he will come, that I have survived into this very day. It's only because I believe with all of my heart, with all of my soul, with every essence of me, that I believe that he will still come. That's the reason why I've survived. See, this is the delicate emotional balance that we all strive for on Tisha B'Av, specifically to this topic. You see, on the one hand, we're very sad that we are still in exile. No, obviously we're so sad. We're mourning the fact that we're in Golus, we're in exile. While at the same time, we look forward to the future, hoping and believing without hesitation, unwavering, that Mashiach will come. And in fact, this idea is punctuated by Chazal and the Gemara and the Yerushalmi and Brachos and in Eicha Rabbah, stating that Mashiach Tzidkenu was born on Tisha B'Av. It's not merely a description of a past history. On the contrary, the intent is that every year Tisha B'Av generates a new impetus for the coming of the redemption. Mashiach Tzidkenu is born. We are inspired by the lofty spiritual level of Rabbi Teitelbaum, but we have to ask 2 important questions. The first, to what extent is a person obligated to believe Mashiach is coming? Is it enough to believe that he will come? Or is there also an obligation to eagerly await his arrival? There's two different parts of that. Again, just to believe that he's going to come, I believe that he's going to come. I believe that he's going to come. Or is there a dual obligation, or is this the obligation to eagerly anticipate, await his arrival, to crave it, to need it? And if that's true, how does a person become the person who truly believes in it and awaits Mashiach's arrival? Many people are accustomed to saying the version of the Rambam's 13 Principles of Faith that's printed in Mos Sidurim after davening Shachris. And there it says, that even though he does tarry, and even if he will tarry, every day I eagerly await for his coming. This belief is not just a mystical concept or chas v'shalom, a Jewish myth. Chalila v'chas. It's a chiyuv, it's an obligation, it's a precept. As the Gemara says, I'm a Rava. The Gemara in Shabbos tells us, after 120 years, a person spends on this earth, were you honest in business? Did you set times to study Torah? Have you done what you could to procreate? And here's the final one. Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph Masechah Shabbos. Tzipisa liyeshua. Did you crave, anticipate the salvation, the coming of Mashiach? Did you want it? Did you yearn for it? Not just did you believe in it, did you yearn for it? Tzipisa. Did you crave it? Did you need it? Did you want it? Did you mamish have to have it? The Rambam writes on this Gemara that this Gemara is not just an inspirational concept, but rather the Rambam writes, it teaches that whoever does not believe the Mashiach will come, or one who does not eagerly await his coming, is a kafir, is a heretic. Massively strong language, not by your local Orthodox rabbi, not by your renegade or on the cusp or on the edge, by the Rambam Maimonides himself. He says that a person who does not eagerly await Mashiach's arrival is a kafir, is a heretic. In the prophecy of Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu, the prophecy of Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Wow! What an impeccably powerful statement of the Rambam. It is obvious from the Rambam that it's not enough to just believe that Mashiach will come, but rather to eagerly await for his arrival every single day. In fact, listen to this. It is said of Shmuel of Salant that every single day, when he would daven Shemona Esrei, think about how many Shemona Esreis do we daven throughout the course of the year. Think of Shmuel Salant and what I'm about to share with you, the next Shemona Esrei that you're going to say during the weekday. Now, when he would say the Shemona Esrei just before getting to the bracha of Tzemach David, and in that tefillah, as we learned in our Monday tefillah class, which asks for the coming of the Mashiach, so Shmuel Salant, he would stop, he would pause. He would pause. Not because he was daydreaming or thinking about the laundry list of things he had to do, the errands, the pickups, the carpools, the products that he had to pick up at the Winn-Dixie or at the Publix or at the Kroger's or at the 7-Eleven or whatever he had to do. He would pause. And then he would look to the right and he would look to the left. And then he would continue his davening. His Talmidim finally one day said to him, why does he do such an odd thing when he davens? Like, that's bizarre. So he said to them, he answered that he knows the Mashiach will come. He knew it. It wasn't something that was abstract, something that could be, might be, was going to be, should have been, might be still in the future. He knows he's going to come. When? Hayom. He's going to come today. And he doesn't want to make a bracha levatala. He doesn't want to make an unnecessary blessing. He doesn't want to utter God's name in vain. So he pauses to see if Mashiach is here before he makes the bracha. Imagine that level. Pausing to the left and pausing to the right to see if the Ribbonu Shalom has sent, if Mashiach is here, and he doesn't want there to just be a bracha levatala. There shouldn't be a blessing in vain. It's unbelievable if you think about the next time you daven Shemona Esrei. Think about Rav Shmuel Salant and what that means to pause before Es Tzemach David, because I don't want to say a bracha levatala blessing in vain, because maybe, just maybe, he is here. So powerful. We have to challenge ourselves to think about the parameters of this mitzvah, the parameters of this obligation. What is unique about the coming of Mashiach, that it is not enough to merely believe in the coming of Mashiach? Why do we likewise need to eagerly await his arrival as well? So the Ramchal Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto writes that prior to the end of days of Mashiach, before the next stage of history, B'nai Israel, the Jewish people, need to become perfected. There's a tikkun atzmi, there's a remedy and a bettering and a perfecting of myself. You know what's going to happen? Mashiach's arrival will inspire the chosen nation, the Jewish people, to spiritual greatness, and it's going to destroy hate. It's going to destroy sin. It's going to destroy the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Imagine how gewaldig that's going to be. And based on this, so says Israel Talbot in his commentary, he writes that when an individual doesn't eagerly await the coming of Mashiach and merely knows he is coming, just simply knows he's coming, but doesn't eagerly await, you know what that means? It's a siman. It's a sign for something. It's a sign that the individual is spiritually stunted. It means that he is not growing. It means that he has given up, if you will, on himself. That person is disconnected from the ultimate goal that the Ribbon Shalom has for our world, for our people, and for us as Yechidim, as individuals. Why? Because Geula, because redemptive state, because Mashiach Tzidkenu, it means that the Tachlis Ha'adam, the purpose, and Tikkun Atzmi, it happens with Mashiach, and therefore if you don't eagerly want him to come, that means you don't eagerly want to grow, you don't eagerly want to change, you don't eagerly want to become different, transcendent, uniquely special. You are all the potential that you are, waiting in a basket, waiting in a bottle, yet to be emergent, but rather waiting in sterile time for which you're stunted. And this is something that we have to realize, says Rabbi Israel Talbot, that a person should not remain stunted or muted, dumbfounded by what it is that they could do, but rather exalted and expressive and able to be the best version of themselves now and forever. And you know when that happens? That happens when Mashiach comes and his time and the heralding in of a new and a promising day, the dawning of a beautiful tomorrow. Rav Simcha Bunim Alter, the Rebbe, writes that his father, Rav Avram Mordechai Alter, who's also known as the Imre Emes, one time he met with the Chavetz Chaim at the first Knessia Gedol in Vienna in 1923. Imagine to meet the Chavetz Chaim. I had the schus a number of years ago to travel to Eastern Europe, and I was in their house in Radin of the great saintly Chavetz Chaim of blessed memory. I went to the Tzion, to the kever, the burial spot of the Chavetz Chaim. It was riveting. It was extraordinary. I went to the house of the Chavetz Chaim. I was in the house of the Chavetz Chaim, took pictures, had an unbelievable story. I've told many of you, and we'll be glad to share with you again for those of you who've never heard it before. The idea of being in the house of the Chavetz Chaim, what it meant. But imagine what it was meant to meet the Chavetz Chaim in 1923. The Chavetz Chaim said to the Imre Emes, you know, in the Kiddush of Shabbos Shachris, we say that we are mechakim, we are waiting for you, Kadosh Baruch Hu. But is this really so, says the Chavetz Chaim? Are we really waiting? We have to feel as if we're lacking in desiring this. The Chavetz Chaim then raised his hand and profoundly asked again, Rabbi Isai at the Knessia Gedoli in Vienna 1923, are we really waiting? And he said, Lama Davar Daima, what is this parable? What is this comparable to? He says, a mashal. We need to await his arrival like a father and a mother who are yearning for the arrival of their only son, whom they haven't seen in a long time. They know that any minute he's going to come, he's going to arrive. Every carriage, every train that passes by, they think this is the one. This is what's carrying him. However, even when they realize that their son was not on the carriage or on the train, they still wait for him. They're learning. They're yearning, rather. They're craning their neck. They're looking to see, when will it be that my son will come off that carriage? Imagine the level of what it means, mechake. We wait for. Im kol zeh achak hello. We're craning our necks. We're waiting to see. We're yearning for his arrival. Because in yearning for his arrival, we're yearning for our own best growth and our best self. So far, we've seen the levels of our Gedolim and Chazal, Chavetz Chaim, and many others that came before who are so spiritually engaged, have reached the terms of their connection to the Mashiach. Of course, we know. The question, though, of course, is how can an average person begin to reach such a level? How can such a person, how should one direct their mind to begin to intellectually and spiritually connect with Mashiach? How does that happen to an average person? So the Gemara Maseches Sota, towards the end of the Masechta Daf, folio 49a, when the Gemara tells us, Bisman Beis Hamikdash Nechrav, when the time that Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, every day, klalos, curses, increase more than the previous day. Nachmanides, the Ramban, explains that these are the curses found in the Techocha and the rebuke in Parshas Kisavo. That's the curses to which the Gemara refers to, that from the time the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, every single day, Nebuch, klalos, curses increase more than the previous day. Rav Moshe Shapiro explained that the Ramban means to say, he explains what the Ramban is, that these curses, they affect every aspect of our physical day. Every aspect of our day, it's pervasive, it's aggressive in our lives. And it will only end when Mashiach comes and ends our current exile. And he writes, and this is very powerful, Moshe Shapiro says, in exile, our lives are antithetical to what they should be in every aspect. Man is not a man. Friendship is not a friendship. Truth is not truth. Pleasure is not pleasure. Nothing is the way it should be. It's abnormal. It is not the way it's supposed to be. Imagine, that's the definition of Golus, of exile. It's abnormality. It's enough of the abnormal. And now we yearn for and crave. We need it to end without a Beis HaMikdash, without Hashem's presence being felt, being seen on a daily basis. We have largely lost touch with our purpose. Man's purpose and role in the world when we mourn on Tisha B'Av. We mourn not only that we are in Golus, that we are in exile. You know what else we mourn? We mourn for Atzmi, for ourselves, that we are not who we should be, who we could be, who we ought to be, who we must be. We're mourning the Beis HaMikdash that is b'seicham, v'osuli mikdash v'shechanti b'seicham, what's inside me. There is a mikdash, there's a Kodesh Baruch Hu, b'tzelem elokim nivres ha'adam. I'm a shtik elokus, I'm a part of the Ribbon Shalom, it's inside me. I mourn that I am not even who I am meant to be. And this is what is supposed to be the theme of this day. It is said about Rav Shlomo Freifeld, the Zeichat Tzadik V'Kodesh L'Vracha, the Rosh Hashiva of Yeshiva Shayoshev in Queens and Far Rockaway, that his office was adorned with pictures of Gedolim. So once, a Talmud in the yeshiva who was new to Judaism, was a Baal Tshuva, he came into his office to speak with him. He innocently said to the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Freifeld, who are all these people on the wall here? Who are these Rabbanim? Who are these rabbis? Rabbi Freifeld sharply answered him, they are part of a long-lost tribe of beings that are very rare today. And those beings, they are called people. They are called people. What Rav Freifeld Zatzal meant to say, I believe, was that those people who truly connect to the Ribbon Shalom, the source of all life, have a greater sense of life's purpose and their own potential. They realize what they're capable of. They realize what they can be. They realize that there's a hope in man, that we can become something and we can do anything we can accomplish if only we put our mind to it, our thoughts to it, our aggressive activities towards it. Then, and only then, we'll be able to be the best version of ourselves. So let's remember the few things that we spoke about here. In our wrap-up, one final story and one final thought. And that's the first, is to remember what Asharas HaShechina, what the divine presence was and saying, no longer can he dwell in our midst. To realize that there's no simcha, there's no open channel for tefillah. To realize that the nisim, the miracles, the divine protection is no longer without the Beis HaMikdash, but yet to know it is biyadeinu, it's in our hands to rebuild it. Kol dar v'dar shlanivna Beis HaMikdash b'yamav malalav ha'kosav kilu hichrivu. It's in our hands because any generation that does not rebuild it, as if we've destroyed it. The four things we focused our attention, respecting and loving our other fellow Jews, the Sfas Emes, the Chasam Sofer, improving our speech. The Chavetz Chaim said, the Imkain Bias Mashiach Taliyah Biyadeinu, it's in our hands to respect the Torah, that the Rebbeinu Shalom would have even given past to the Gili Arayas, Shvichas Damim, the murder, the incest, to the Avodas Kochavim, but rather it's only because of the negligence and the muse of Torah that the people had. That's number three. We have to connect ourselves to Torah. And finally, the yearning for Mashiach, the Yismach Moshe, and how much pain he had. To what extent, the Animam and B'Mushalim, it's not just to believe in it, but Tzipisa Yeshua, as the Gemara in Shabbos tells us, to yearn for it, to crave it. As the Rambam writes, it's not just to simply believe it, but a person who doesn't eagerly await is a kofer, is a heretic in the prophecy. There's Moshe Rabbeinu, or Shmuel Salat, and the unbelievable pause that he makes, not to make a bracha of Atala because he doesn't want to say, because he believes Ayom that it's going to be. How do we regular people do that? Says the Ramchal that we're growing. We have to understand what that means. That if we're not yearning for it, it means that we're spiritually stunted. We don't want that. The Ger Rebbe, in telling the story of Nimrei Emes' father and his meeting with the Chavetz Chaim, that we have to understand that we have to yearn for it like a parent would yearn, father and mother, for the child. How does an average person do it? The Ramban says that it is to realize that the klalos of Moshe Shapiro telling us how a regular person can do it, that life in exile is not our life, man is not man, friendship is not friendship, pleasure is not pleasure, nothing as it's supposed to be. And the idea that people, So Cesar Freifeld and his wife explaining who the people are on the wall. The long-lost tribe of beings are rare today. They're called people. Those who appreciate the Almighty, the source of life, have a greater sense of life's purpose than anything and everything. And all can be possible if only we put our minds to it. We can make it happen. That is these 4 ideas that are what we've lost, and the 4 ideas of what it is that we can do to rebuild it. And we keep in mind what it is that we can do and what nothing is that stands in our way, then friends, anything and everything is possible. I just want to end my remarks by telling you a story that I actually heard today by Rabbi Ephraim Elio Shapiro, the Rav in Kehila Shari Tefillah in North Miami Beach, a colleague, a very dear friend, who's the Rav of my grandparents of blessed memory. An erudite, a chacham, a scholar. He told an unbelievable story about something that happened to him personally and a lesson that he learned from his own child, his own son. Not to be meyayesh, not to give up hope, not to think that we are unable to accomplish literally everything. If some of you remember last year, literally last year this time, there was what was going around. There was a girl who was turning 2 years old who needed a shot, needed a medication. It was an injection. The problem was 2 things. Number 1 is that this injection needed to be given to this child before she had a very rare disease, before she turned 2, before her 2nd birthday. The second problem, though, was that the medication cost $2.2 million. And everybody was going around trying to raise that money. And everybody's thinking to themselves, like, how are we going to raise that money? Because when everybody became aware of it, it was just a few days before this child's birthday. It wasn't like they had months and months, a year or so to plan. There was literally just before this child's birthday, if they're going to get this injection, the child has a chance to live. And if not, the child will, no question, not survive. And the Jewish people, there were emails and WhatsApps and text messages and messaging all around, emails sent literally all around from this Beis Yaakov, from this yeshiva, from this school, and from that house and this synagogue. Every place was participating and trying to raise money for this girl that nobody knew. They didn't know them intimately. People knew them, but not intimately as it went around to the Jewish world. Rabbi Shapiro says it was on an Erev Shabbos, and his wife came into his home office, and they were talking about this case. They're figuring out how in the world are they going to participate in $2.2 million. And he started to cry with his wife that there's just no way. That's an insurmountable amount. How is it possible? Who's going to raise that amount of money for such in a short period of time? It's huge. And they were crying. And just then he said his then 8-year-old son came into the office. And I guess overheard some of what they were saying. He seems to have shed a bit of a tear was emerging from his eye, and he ran out of the office. And Rabbi Shapiro said to his wife, like, maybe we said something too much. We told too many details, and he overheard. He's scared. A 2-year-old girl, she's going to die. An 8-year-old, it's too much to bear. And just a few moments later, this 8-year-old boy comes into his father's study, and with his mother still standing there, he pulls from his pocket 2 $20 bills, and he says that here are 2 $20 bills. Here's $40. And he says, this is $20 that Bubby gave for me for my birthday, and another $20 that I got for Hanukkah. Take these $40, Tati. I want to participate. I want to contribute to the raising of the money for this child. Rabbi Shapiro said that he completely, utterly lost it at that moment. In that moment, he saw 2 things. Number 1, that his child taught him, with those $40 or 2 $20 bills, that there's an avas Yisrael, there's an avas chinam, there's a love, baseless love that can be given to somebody who's a perfect stranger, but they're a brother, they're a sister, they're a member of Klal Yisrael, they're a member of our people. We have to help them. We have to do anything and everything possible. He was literally moved to tears. He couldn't believe that his child was willing to give $40 for him. For this child, an 8-year-old, $40 is like $40 million. From Bubby, a $20 bill on your birthday and on Hanukkah, it's millions of dollars, number 1. He said, and in that moment, he realized the second thing, and that the $2.2 million that they needed to raise, he said, for sure, Klal Yisrael is going to raise it. If my son's going to give me $40 on an Erev Shabbos, there's no question the strength. Look at the Jewish people. They yearn for, they want to help, they want to be better, they want to grow, they want to be the best. And for some of you, as you remember the cases in South Florida, you'll remember that even by Monday morning, people were trying to get onto the website to donate. They weren't even able to because they reached their goal and then some. So that means even if you wanted to at that point, there was way more than $2 million they raised. They were able to get to their goal and be able to help this child. She got the injection. She was able to have the medication that she needs. She should have a longer year. She should have a long life. And she should have refuah shleima, and as there should be refuah shleima around the world. But what we understand from this unbelievable story, what he learned from his son, and we learned from the Jewish people, that we mourn We fall. We have lost. We have cried. We've been mourning. We have tears. There's been anguish and tremendous pain. There's been period and machlokes and pandemic and illness and death. And yet, Klal Yisrael rises up. Fire, from the ashes, we rise. And we make something of ourselves, and we call ourselves responsible to the task of what we are in the narrative of the beautiful story of the Jewish people. Shall we never despair? No yield should there ever be. Klal Yisrael is strong. The Jewish people are powerful. Let us mourn properly so that we can rejoice and celebrate with simcha, with sosain, with Yemaisa Mashiach. It should be His will that we should continue to work on ourselves, and HaKadosh Baruch will send Melech HaMashiach Tzidkenu, and we too will all become people like those Rabbi Freifeld's people that hung on his wall, and all be Zoiche to Geula Shalema b'mehera v'yameinu v'neimar Amen. Yotzim Ufanecha. We should meet again. We should meet again soon with Binyan Beis HaMikdash b'mehera v'yameinu v'nomar Amen. I thank you all so much for listening. Let's all be inspired and take the inspiration to not just today, but to every single day. And the Mirz Hashem, be the best version of ourselves. I thank you so much for listening. I wish you all a meaningful rest of your day, and you should have a meaningful and an easy rest of the fast.